So how many of here think that they've experienced a miracle in their lives? Raise your hand. So a lot of these miracles that we experience, they're personal miracles, I would say. A birth, a wedding, whatever it comes. But the question is, how do we know when we experience a communal miracle? In other words, you experience something as a group, as a country, as a world. How do you know it's a miracle? How long will it take for you to realize it? Now, for many Jews, and I'm going to put myself in that group, this week saw the completion of a miracle. The end of the 12-day war between the U.S. and Israel versus Iran. Journalist amidst said the following about this miracle on the Call Me Back podcast. Highly recommend. About the miracle he perceived. Here's what he said. He said, the miracle that occurred in just 12 days, saving the Jewish state from the most severe threat ever posed since its establishment in 1948, is truly remarkable. The fact that a fundamentalist regime almost possessed a nuclear weapon aimed at Israel became even more horrifying when you consider the actions that they took over these past 12 days with their ballistic missiles, hitting civilian targets, targeting civilians. Imagine what they would have done had they possessed weapons of mass destruction. Imagine if they had nuclear weapons. So although the facts are not all in, it is clear that Iran has been set back significantly from their pursuit of a nuclear weapon that would be used to threaten or annihilate the only Jewish state in the world. Their leadership is decimated. Their people are angry at their failed leadership, and they are now defenseless from the air. For many Israelis and Jews around the world, it's hard not to look at this as the sequel to the 67 war. We had the 6-day war, and now we have the 12-day war. With inflation, right? But think about this. If we're living in the aftermath of a miracle, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of miracle was it, and what does it demand of us? Now, there are a lot of miraculous moments in the Torah that transcend nature, and in this week's parashah, we have a number of these communal miraculous moments. But rather than focus on the one that you might be thinking I'm going to talk about, which is mainly a hole appearing out of nowhere and swallowing up Korach and his gang of 250, I want to focus on another miracle. The miracle of Aaron's staff. The miracle comes right after, we actually read it today at the beginning of our reading today. The miracle comes right after this failed rebellion of Korach, Datan, and Aviram, and others, where the earth swallows up, as I said, 250 people, a miracle in itself, and then a plague kills another 14,700 people. During the plague, Moses requested the heads of the tribes to provide a staff, each one per tribe, including Aaron's. And they placed the staff in the tent of the pact, the Ohel Ha'edut. And the next day, Moses enters the tent and discovers that there was one staff that actually came to life. The staff of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted. It had brought forth sprouts, produced blossoms, and borne almonds. So we see here something that was dead is now alive, and everyone saw it together. It was meant to be a sign to the people that Aaron is the true representative of God, and there's more to meets the eye when it comes to this staff because it exists in Jewish history. In Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, we learn that Aaron's staff, the staff that was meant to produce blossoms and almonds, was one of the 10 things created in the twilight between the 6th day of creation and the 7th day of Sabbath. Another midrash states that same staff was held in the hand of every king until the temple was destroyed, and then it was divinely hidden away. That same staff also is destined to be held in the hand of the Messiah. So we see here this staff is important. It's hidden away somewhere. And as we learn here, not all staffs are created equal. His is special. We also learn that it is timeless. It exists throughout the ages, and even though it is lost to us today, it will be held by the Messiah when all sorts of miraculous events will happen, like lambs and wolves playing together. But the question is, what are the miracles in this staff that can help us today? Because no one's found it yet. First, let's look at what the staff produced. What did it produce? Who can tell me? Almonds. Now, after the Korach episode, there's this plague. It comes, kills 14,700 people. The people are deeply divided after a civil war. The fighting is over, but the war, in the sense of the enmity that people feel for one another, is still very much raging. The end of the war did not mean that peace would inevitably come. Coming to peace, as we know, is much harder than beginning a war. In the Iturei Torah, which is compiled by Rabbi Aaron Yaakov Greenberg, there's a story told about Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Kook, who was the father of the very well-known famous rabbi, Rabbi Avram Yisrael Kook. He was called one day, he was living in Israel, to come back to a city, a little town in Eastern Europe, to bring peace to this town. They thought that they could bring this great Torah scholar from Israel, that he would bring peace. So in his sermon, Rav Kook, he referenced this rebellion of Korach. And he posed the question, why did Aaron's staff blossom with almonds? Why almonds? Why not another fruit? And he explains the significance of almonds. He said there are two types of almonds. One that is sweet at first but turns bitter. And there's another that is bitter at first and then becomes sweet. And he says, so it is with human strife and reconciliation. Conflict, Rabbi Kook taught, often feels sweet at the outset. There's a certain satisfaction in standing one's ground, in fighting for what one believes is right. But the sweetness turns bitter over time as divisions deepen and relationships fray. In other words, you can't be at war forever. Peace, on the other hand, he says, is bitter at the beginning. It is difficult to yield, to suppress the urge, to win, to be right. Yet if one is able to overcome that initial resistance and make even a small concession for the sake of harmony, the result is lasting sweetness and healing for all. Now, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Kook's words touched the hearts of everyone in the congregation, and because of those words, he was able to bring peace. Rav Kook brings up an interesting point. Conflict is seemingly easier than peace. And this is how Korach's opponents felt when they saw him, and is this how they felt, is the question, when they saw the rebels being swallowed up. The question is, and why I say this, is that when the opponents, when Aaron and Moses and all of them, they see these opponents swallowed up, I wonder if they realized something, that even in the Torah, you have to live with your enemies. In the Psalms, we read that Bnei Korach actually survived. So to the rabbis, it's evidence that not all of Korach's family was swallowed up, and there were still some that they had to live with. I want to transition now to the future, to present day. In 2022, I know, way back, because so much has happened, but a right-wing government coalition, remember it was part of the last government. His name is at the time he was Deputy Religious Affairs Minister Matan Kahana, and he made some news when he was talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He said, if there was a button you could press that would make all the Arabs disappear, that would send them on an express train to Switzerland, may they live amazing lives there, I wish them all the best in the world, I would press that button. But there is no such button. Apparently, we were destined to exist here together on this land in some form. Now, what do you think made the news? The first part. But the noteworthy part was the second part. A right-wing Israeli politician publicly coming to terms with a reality. Israel has to share the land in some way. Our enemies today are not going anywhere. Israel still has to be in the Middle East. We often think that when our enemies are defeated, they just disappear. Even in the case of Korach, Datan, Aviram, we know that the descendants are there. Rabbi Cook's story goes against everything we know. We have to fight until the end. There is no surrender unless it is unconditional. But just as wars are fought, peace must also be created. And that is the second miracle of Aaron's staff, the staff that went through this process of blossoming, beginning with budding, producing flowers, providing fruit, in this case almonds, but happened all at once. The miracle and the almonds it produced reminded me of us, the Jewish people. Throughout our history, people have counted us out. They said that we were like a dead stick. Even we believe that at times. And yet, like Aaron's staff, we miraculously blossomed. There's no greater example of this than the Shoah, the Holocaust, from 1933 to 1945, and the reestablishment of the State of Israel just 3 years later in 1948. The state was founded in a war also. They were attacked by 7 Arab nations. But deep down, I bet you, the founders of Israel wished it had been created, not in war, but in peace. It is this staff that we must hold. The staff of the pursuer of peace, the Rodef Shalom, Aaron, not Korach, the selfish demagogue who radicalized his followers, leading them to their deaths. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, of blessed memory, wrote, "The episode of Korach teaches us that there are 2 ways of resolving conflict, by force and by persuasion. The first negates your opponent. The second enlists your opponent, taking his or her challenges seriously and addressing them. Force never ends conflict, not even in the case of Moses, not even in the force, not even when the force is miraculous. There never was a more decisive intervention than the miracle that swallowed up Korach and his fellow rebels. Yet, it did not end the conflict. It deepened it. After it had taken place, the whole Israelite community, the ones that had not been part of the rebellion, complained, 'You have killed the Lord's people.'" What Rabbi Sachs is pointing out here is that, as we learn, the whole did not end the war. It was the next step. It was the staff that produced almonds and showed that rebirth can happen. I want to again bring it back to current day to talk about this current situation, the 12-day war. In the case of the Iranian regime, me personally, I don't think there's much to discuss. But I wonder if there are other voices in the Middle East that we can be open to listening to bring peace. Israel is still very much at war. The hostages are still home, and the war will not end until the hostages, each one of them, returns. But that day will come. As distant as it seems, that day will come. The end of the war will come. And the more difficult work of peace will begin. And for those days, we will need different tools. Instead of spears, we will need staffs. In a world where we think the only tool is a hammer and everything looks like a nail, let us remember the lessons of Aaron and his miraculous staff and how it can inspire miracles, especially in our time. Amen.